This is LBC. Message James O'Brien on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
11:48 is the time. One element missing from our conversation about the imminent state visit is the role of royalty in the modern world. And there is an extraordinary piece by Andrew O'Hagan in the London Review of Books that I cannot recommend highly enough. But enough about that. Let's get back to the United States of America, where Simon Marks awaits. I'm sure you derive about as much pleasure as I do from being proved right daily about what was going to happen next and what was going to unfold and how Donald Trump's character was going to define almost every aspect of this unfolding disaster. But it doesn't mean that we can stop paying attention. Simon, what's the latest?
Well, I mean, it is exasperating, isn't it, James? I mean, the performance by the president yesterday in his press conference down at Mar-a-Lago was a masterclass in evasion, in contradiction, and in making it up on the fly. I mean, he got to the point yesterday at Mar-a-Lago where he actually, seriously, with a straight face, was advancing the argument that not only was Iran on the brink of getting a nuclear weapon that could eventually target the United States, although he simultaneously laid claim to the argument that he had completely obliterated all of Iran's nuclear capacity only last July in Operation Midnight Hammer, but he also advanced the claim that Iran was on the brink of taking over the entire Middle East. That, he said, is why he had to act. I mean, luckily they got in just in the nick of time and stopped Iran from taking over the entire Middle East. A completely false, specious claim. There isn't a single analyst out there that can find anything rooted in fact to support that claim. So he says we've won, but we haven't won enough. When he's pushed on what winning enough looks like, it becomes apparent that he's going to do this for a few more days and then perhaps engage in some kind of partial withdrawal, although what sort of ability he has to constrain Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli forces from continuing their assault on Iran was not addressed during the course of the press conference. And I think it's become evident that behind the scenes, he's had the Qataris and the Saudis particularly putting the arm on him and saying, this has got to stop. We told you not to do this. We've warned you consistently about the risks of this sparking a wider regional conflict in the Middle East. It's laying waste to our economies. It's laying waste to cities like Dubai. It's putting our citizens at risk. You've got now to climb down. And buried in all of this, James, was the complete betrayal of the American people by a president who twice now, during the protests back in January, and then again 8 or 9 days ago when this war got underway, said to the Iranian people, first time round, help is on the way. Second time round, now is the time for action. Now is the time for you to seize control of your own destiny. But take a listen to the betrayal of the Iranian people by Donald Trump at the end of the press conference yesterday.
You promised the Iranian people you would help them, but it sounds like you're willing to end this fight after your military objectives have wrapped up. Isn't that a betrayal of the people?
Will I help them? I'd like to, if they can behave. But they've been very menacing. You know, they're great people. They have an amazing population. It's amazing, smart, brilliant, energetic. They have a great... I'd love to help them, but they have to be in a system that allows them to be helped. And right now they're in a system that only allows failure.
Now, just to be fair to him, I think he had trouble hearing the question. So the early part of that, when he appears to be suggesting that the Iranian people have been menacing him, I think he was really talking there about the Iranian leadership. But as you head further down that answer, and he makes it clear that he can only help people who exist in a system where help is viable, and they unfortunately don't, that was absolutely pulling the rug out from beneath the Iranian people, for whom he's going to offer, it would seem, absolutely no assistance as he begins the process of wrapping this military campaign up.
And of course, on both sides of the Atlantic, that means that the people who profess to be in favour of this action, because it would liberate the Iranian people or replace the regime or punish the human rights abuses and the years of oppression and suppression with egg all over their faces. But it doesn't matter because Donald Trump also gives them another reason why they should have supported the war in the first place, even though it completely contradicts the one that was given 10 minutes ago.
But I think it's even more devastating for them than that, James, because again, in that press conference yesterday, he made it apparent that he's perfectly willing to carry on working and dealing with whatever is left of the regime. He doesn't much fancy Mojtaba Khamenei, the supreme leader's son, casting around looking for someone else to lead. But he again cited the example of Venezuela, where he says he's working with the woman he always refers to as Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's number 2 in the old government, now running the show. And he thinks she's fabulous and we can just get stuff done with her. And, you know, the subtext of that message is we don't have to worry about elections and democracy and getting the Venezuelan people involved in this. I'm going to be the decider. He said that he and Benjamin Netanyahu mutually would decide when this was all going to wrap up and that he must play a role personally in selecting the next Iranian leader. So this is not an Iranian democracy that he has any interest in fostering whatsoever.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and I won't hold my breath for all the apologies and op-eds from all the people who insisted that this was a necessary corrective to the hideousness of the Iranian regime, because they were, at the time, completely ignoring the obvious reality of Donald Trump and what he was most likely to do. Does any of this, and this is a question I'm asking you for the 7 millionth time, does any of this matter in the context? I mean, his approval ratings are plummeting, aren't they? Unemployment figures are bad. Inflation, or at least the price of oil, is going to be going up, despite his attempts to calm things a bit yesterday, which were, a qualified success. Does any of it matter? Does anybody ever show signs of breaking ranks or pulling away from the Trump pantechnicon?
Well, I think it matters in the sense that if he thought this was going to be a cakewalk and he thought that this was going to turn his fortunes around for the midterms, that certainly hasn't played out. And indeed, yesterday in that press conference, we went back to the whole issue of election interference and his argument that mail-in voting is a fraud. I mean, he's definitely returning to all of that very, very soon as an issue. He was actually, on a very rare occasion, held to account over the Tomahawk missile strike on the school in Iran that kicked this conflict off, leading to at least 165 deaths, mostly of school children, many of them girls. And he faced this question from a New York Times journalist.
You just suggested that Iran somehow got its hands on a Tomahawk and bombed its own elementary school on the first day of the war. But you're the only person in your government saying this. Even your defense secretary wouldn't say that when he was asked, standing over your shoulder on your plane on Saturday. Why are you the only person saying this?
Because I just don't know enough about it. I think it's something that I was told is under investigation. But Tomahawks are used by others, as you know. Numerous other nations have Tomahawks. They buy them from us. But I will certainly, whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
Now, the extraordinary thing about that is not so much the president's response, where he's plainly lying about the notion that this was an Iranian missile strike that went wrong. I mean, we even had Republican senators yesterday, John Kennedy of Louisiana, publicly apologizing for what they conceded had been an American mistake right at the start of the war. But the other flip side to this is that the reporter there from the New York Times is being praised here as though he's Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow rolled into one for performing the rare but traditionally usual role of actually asking the President of the United States a bit of a bouncer, a fairly straight question. And this is a reporter coming from the same newspaper that it took fully 1 week before they put on the front page of their newspaper an article that pointed out to their readers that actually President Trump had gone to war without any plan for how it was going to end. But so rare is any kind of interaction like that with the president from members of the White House press corps that, you know, there are hosannas ringing out for this reporter who just got to ask Trump a very basic question. It's an extraordinary situation for this country to be in.
I'd missed that, actually. I was probably one of the people queuing up to cover him in plaudits because we're so unused to seeing somebody do something that would have been not even... I mean, it would have been banal in normal times. It would have been a question of unutterable normalness, wouldn't it? It was, of course they're going to ask that. I mean, it is... yeah, of course. I mean, well done him. He might not be on the next round.
Good on him for doing it.
He might lose
Absolutely.
his ticket in the room, but goodness me, we shouldn't be... That is a weird one. We should squeeze in a little more on the story you told us about last week. The other reason for the war, that it's all God's will.
Yes, and that story is intensifying. The Military Religious Freedom Foundation that we were talking about last week at the time had received scores of complaints from troops in the field. The number of complaints has now topped 200 about the religiously inspired pep talks that the troops say they are being given by their commanding officers, portraying this military action as being part of the sort of end of days prophecy that is going to return Jesus to earth for the next 1,000 years. More than 30 Democrats in Congress are now calling on the Pentagon's Inspector General to launch a probe of whether the constitutional separation between church and state has been breached in those pep talks. And we've also seen President Trump again cloaking himself in some pretty extraordinary religious imagery. Yesterday on Truth Social, he reposted a video of a largely forgotten evangelical pastor born in South Africa who moved to the United States, who in 2007 predicted that Trump would ascend to the presidency, and also in another sermon predicted that there would be a massive earthquake in Iran and it was all ordained by God. And those sermons by this pastor, Kim Clement, are suddenly getting an enormous amount of traction among Trump's Make America Great Again and America First followers, as the administration does nothing to suggest that it is appalled by any suggestion that it has breached that constitutional separation of church versus state.
On we go. We should. I mean, we haven't got time.
Indeed, James.
But we haven't got time. We may catch up again tomorrow, or certainly before the end of the week, because I felt that some of the comments he made about the electoral system. Actually, I have got time. I'll tell you what it reminded me of. The way he talks about Iran being on the brink of conquering the entire Middle East is very similar rhetorically to how he talks about the Democrats having some nefarious plan to ride roughshod over electoral law. It's as if he's sort of softening people up for doing something hideous by pretending that the other people were about to do it first. Right or wrong?
Yeah, there is no... Right. I mean, there's no question that we're coming straight back to the issue of election jiggery-pokery. Absolutely no doubt about it. He talks about it all the time. He yesterday suggested that he would not sign any piece of legislation into law unless and until the Save America Act is passed by the Senate. That is the act that would require voter ID this November. And if it doesn't get passed, it's extremely likely that he's going to issue an executive order requiring voter ID to be presented at polling stations all over the country, which, of course, the Democrats oppose because they argue it is an attempt at voter suppression. We are absolutely, definitely coming back to that story within a matter of days because he's going to take us there.
Although it did actually backfire when the sort of pound shop Trump, Boris Johnson, did it in this country, and Jacob Rees-Mogg was the one who gave the game away on that one. Simon Marks, thank you very much indeed. The time now is 12:02.